It is so good to walk in and to see many familiar faces, perhaps. If I did not remember your name, get over it, do forgiveness work. And then I would do the forgiveness work. There's a lot more of you than there are me. And so, first of all, these tears that you see, they're tears of joy of being here. But also, there's some tears of healing around it for me as well. So I want to thank you for providing those tears and those opportunities to continue on my journey, to continue on my healing journey of all those things that I have to do as a spiritual being. Don't we have a lot to do as a spiritual being? So I want to just first of all just say, first of all, I'm in Cincinnati because last week I attended a conference put on by the Alban Institute, and Reverend George was there, and Reverend Cole Pearson. I just ordained him. And so we had a wonderful time together. And of course, then George was so gracious to invite me to speak, and I was gracious to accept. So it was wonderful. So that was great. And then this trip has been wonderful to reunite with Cincinnati as well. What growth has taken place here in the last 7 years. I see landmarks that wasn't there, and I just see the growth, and I feel the energy. We're all energy people, are we not? We feel the energy of the city, and I call it good. So a couple things I want to talk about. First of all, I want to share with you that my current congregation, I love, Unity Christ Church in Minneapolis is just a wonderful place to serve. I've been there, and we're having a good time. We're having a good time, and we're growing together just as we grew together when I was here. We're growing together, so check us out. I'll just be blatant about it. Check out our website at unitychristchurch.org, and if you're ever available, catch us with live streaming. So that's wonderful as well. So do that. So I really want to send my regards and my greetings from Unity Christ Church. You know, we're all one. We're sister churches. And so send them, and I know that some of you have visited me there, and you're welcome at any time. Come and be with us. Also, I want to talk to everybody that's come in. The second thing they ask is, where's Eddie? You know, what am I, chopped liver? Where's Eddie? So Eddie goes. So first of all, I get to say Eddie is full-time working, and he doesn't have enough PTO to come. You know what I'm saying? So he's at home, and he sends his love, and he sends his regards, and you know, he calls Cincinnati his hometown. He says, Cincinnati's my hometown. This is the first town I made a stop in coming from Turkey. You know, he's from Turkey. So he says, this is my hometown, and he says, New Thought Unity Center is my home church. This November, Eddie and I will be together 10 years. I've done nothing for 10 years. 2 years ago, we went south. Now, you've got to understand, south in Minnesota is to Iowa. Okay, so 2 years ago, we went south to Iowa, and we got married. So anyway, I asked him. He said yes. I was shocked. So my younger brother, 10 years younger than I am, he lives in Alabama. So, if you want to marry this man, you're going to ask him. He's not going to ask you. And I really got in touch after my mom died, that all of her children's pictures was up above her dad and their spouses, and Eddie was not up there. And that just, I didn't like that. You know? So I said to my brother, Eddie's not up there. I think Eddie needs to be up there. He says, you're not married. Thanks a lot. But you know, you could be if you wanted to be. So I really thank my younger brother, one day you'll meet me perhaps, and he for really encouraging me to step out and do something that was really outside of my comfort zone to some degree. So anyway, needless to say, I didn't come to preach about Eddie, but I have already. So I want to share with you. First of all, I understand you're in the middle of a series on values. your values, and values are so important. And New Thought Unity Centers has some overlapping values with Unity Christ Church. First of all, Reverend George kicked off the series. We're talking about the value of love. That love that we have with each other, and how important that is, and it's that love that connects us. The second thing that happened was that Nancy came and continued that series by talking about spiritual principles and spiritual teachings. And I used to think, well, what's the difference? What's the difference? I really got in touch with the difference. The spiritual principles or the spiritual laws that we live by, that we work by, that we apply in our own life. The granddaddy of them all, that spiritual law, is the law of cause and effect. That law of circulation. And we learn that law, and from there, we learn all of the other laws in our life. That law of forgiveness, that law of love, that law of praise, that law of humor. We learn these laws, and we begin to practice them in our life. And we see that they make a difference in our life. Spiritual teachings, on the other hand, are the inspirational teachings that we are given in order to be inspired to step forth and to apply these principles in our life. There's something, we're often inspired in churches. Thank you, God. Keep coming back. And at the same time, we're inspired in other places as well, right? So these teachings that inspire us to step into the practice of spiritual principles. So I love that as a value of New Thought Unity Center. I love the fact that you have selected that. And of course you have selected prayer. I hold a prayer. Thank you, David Kaiser. Beautiful, beautiful. And celebration. I just want to comment on celebration for a moment. Sometimes we think of celebration, my dear friends, as the outer. We are going to celebrate out. Let's go down to Friendship Hall and celebrate. Or let's celebrate an accomplishment in our life. But celebration sometimes, my dear friends, is not the outward. Celebration is the inward. When we celebrate, honor, and affirm the divine presence in each and every person. We celebrate. Don't you, when you see someone and you walk in and you look at them and you say, gosh, I celebrate that divine presence with you. You may not see it aloud, okay? But you feel that. And it comes across in different ways. You celebrated me as you came in today. You celebrated me, but you also celebrated that infinite, invisible presence within me. That presence that connects us in such a powerful way. And so today I'm going to talk about inclusiveness. Can't think of a better person to talk about inclusiveness. But also, I want to also share with you that that some of your values, you've totally done them right. Because they overlap with some of ours. So I know you've done them right. So needless to say. For example, inclusiveness is one of our key values at Unity Christ Church. Prayer and meditation is another key value. And practical use of truth principles is another one that overlaps. In Unity, we don't really hear a lot about covenant. We don't throw that word around. You don't hear it on the platform that much. We're going to create a covenant with each other. That sounds like a more traditional church that talks about covenants. And yet I would say to you that most of you have entered into a covenant if you are in relationship with someone significant in your life, or you have been in a covenant with each other. If Andy and I were married, we entered into a deeper covenant with each other. A covenant, my dear friends, is really the values in this church. You have entered into a covenant with each other because you have said, these are our values. And we're going to enter into this covenant, and this is how we are going to be in relationship with each other. Our values. In our church, the phone goes off, you put an extra $1,000 in the I don't mean to be churches, it's a good way to collect money. But needless to say, a covenant declares the values and norms that we are going to live by as a congregation. Sometimes it's more than just putting the values in a beautiful printed piece of paper or putting them on your website, or putting them wherever. It says, these values in this community resonate with the values, my personal values within me. And I am going to live these values in my community. And you go, well, we all have personal values. I sincerely hope we all have personal values. We do. If you want to know your personal values in your life, look at your life. That's how it's showing up in your life. Now, how do we get these personal values? How do we get them? How do I get mine? How does George, Nancy, how do you get yours? These personal values. I believe that we have them within us, just like everything else. And they are within us, and they are to be revealed. I thought to myself, now, why is inclusiveness so important in my life? Not only just in a spiritual community, but in my life. And I thought back, and I thought to myself, I remember when I was a small child in South Alabama, growing up in a small rural town in the 50s. God, I just told a lot of things in my life. In the 50s. And I can remember going to public places and seeing over here a water fountain that said white, and a water fountain over here that said colored. I knew as a small child that something was wrong. I remember going into a hospital in a small rural southern town and walking in, and there was a waiting room over here that said white, and a waiting room over here that said colored. I knew at an early age something was wrong, and I knew and I began to see the importance of inclusiveness. I saw it again in high school, when my high school was integrated. In the 11th grade, and I saw the National Guard come with that first African-American man and entered into our grade of the 11th grade. I knew something was wrong. And I remember attending a Southern Baptist church that I grew up in, and I loved that Southern Baptist church. I loved the RAs. I loved my relationship with Jesus at the time. I loved it. And I can remember when that Southern Baptist church told me because of my sexual orientation, I was going to burn in hell forever. I knew there was something wrong. And when you, my dear friends, see things in your own life, you know about inclusiveness too. You know how important it is in your life. And you know, when you think, for example, of the Buddha, think, for example, of the Buddha. The Buddha was not always the Buddha, right? The Buddha had to wake up to become the Buddha. Had to wake up, that's what it is. And so needless to say, as a child, you remember the fact that he was shielded from everything that was not pretty and gorgeous. He was shielded from all poverty. He was shielded from all sickness. He was shielded. His parents were in such a financial position that they were sure that he would not have to see it. If you remember correctly, the legend says of the 4 sights, he went out 4 times, my dear friends, from this protected home, this protected community, and he saw 4 different sights. The man, my friend, that was crippled, and each sight became worse and worse. And it was through seeing these 4 different things, I believe with all my heart, that is how the Buddha became the Buddha. He became compassionate. He became compassionate. He saw what was not right. And in that process, he began to wake up. Jesus, our master teacher, I believe did the same thing. As a small child, I can see him on the hills of Galilee looking up, realizing that something coming to him. We don't know nearly as much about his childhood, obviously, as we do the Buddha. But as he's looking up, I can see him saying, wow, I am one with everything. I am one with everything. And we know at an early age, at age 12, he was like, I am about my Father's business. We acquire our personal values through experiences in our life. They're there. They come forth when we see something in our life that's changing. And I believe that also these are our greatest gifts. Paul the Apostle says there are many gifts. We all have different gifts, thank you, God. We all have different gifts, but all of one source. And that is the end of that. That one source are our gifts. And I also know that when I'm holding on to some unforgiveness, I'm not here doing a lesson on forgiveness and unforgiveness, but when I am holding on to unforgiveness in my life, it's truly a challenge for these gifts to come forth. Jesus was totally inclusive if you consider him one of the master teachers. Think of one of his major lessons, the Sermon on the Mount. In the Beatitudes, he offers visions of the kingdom of God to the poor, the mourning, the meek, the hungry, the merciful, the peacemaker, the persecuted. Inclusion was for everyone, even those that are marginalized. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of our Unity movement, the name itself that came through him is also about being inclusive. Unity! Wow, what can be more inclusive than the word unity? One with one with everything. And this came through him after meditation, and he shouted out, he says, this is the name that will be for our work. And of course, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, co-founded our Unity movement, was such an inclusive that Unity was not to take the place of any religion. Unity was to be coming together with a myriad of different streams of thought. And that there are room for all of it in the container. James Dillard Freeman, a wonderful Unity poet, the first Unity church I ever walked into in New Orleans, Louisiana, there the pamphlet was, Unity leaves no one out. And I thought, wow, you mean I can come back the second time? Yes, I can come back the second time, because most of the places that I was going to those points in my life, they would not invite me back the second time. Sometimes, my dear friends, we get inclusion and diversity mixed up. We do. They're both very good. Diversity, for example, is about the political and social policy of encouraging tolerance for people of different backgrounds, and this is good. This is good. But inclusion, my dear friends, takes it a step deeper. It takes it to a different place. Inclusion is the value and the practice of ensuring that people feel they belong to your organization, your community. So we can easily say, yes, we have a very, very diversified congregation. But we, as all together on this spiritual journey, we're glad to be together on this spiritual journey. Thank God I need you on my spiritual journey. But as we're all together on this spiritual journey, we, my dear friends, are able to take it a step further and say, okay, we want to be sure that you are included in this community. And I'm just not talking about first-time guests. God bless you, first-time guest person, for being here today. That's important. And at the same time, I'm talking about all of us. All of us. And so inclusion, diversity was about counting people. Inclusion is about including people. Including people. Diversity is about command and control. Inclusion is about total engagement. My friend Shirley Engelmeyer, who has an organization in Minneapolis called Inclusion, Inc. She is about working with business. She's Reverend Shirley Engelmeyer, ordained Unity minister. She is about working with businesses to be sure that they are inclusive within their business. She works all over the country, all over the world, actually. But she says inclusion is about total engagement. It's about brain power, not about horsepower. Wow, you know what? We want to include people sometimes in our community, but wow. Let them come up with an idea that I don't agree with, and let's see how I want to include them. Inclusion, my dear friends, is not only welcoming, but Inclusion is about welcoming the ideas, because they add to our discourse. Inclusion is also about being sure that we are gracious, that we are welcoming. Inclusion is about honoring the holy within each and every person. It's our second principle, is it not? That Christ's presence is with each and every person, and we honor that Christ's presence within each and every person. So I applaud you. I applaud you in being an inclusive community. So one of the things that we have done, not that we certainly have an answer, but one of the things that we have done at our ministry in Minneapolis, one of the things we've done in Minneapolis is that we have created an I am team. An I am team. And this team is about helping us to remember that we're about inclusion. That we're about inclusion. I stands for inclusion. A stands for accessibility. And M stands for ministry. We are about the inclusion and accessibility ministry. And they put before us how we can raise our consciousness, how we can continue to raise our consciousness about inclusion and accessibility. I see this ramp here. I say, yay God! Yay God! It wasn't here when I was here, but yay God! Because sometimes even accessibility to the platform is not always easy. Out of this team, we have been able to put in two fully accessible bathrooms. Thank you, Father, to God. And at the same time, so inclusion, I just want to wrap this up for a minute or two. I can see a couple of yawns out there. So the coffee's downstairs. So it's really important for you to remember, first of all, and first and foremost, to remember that you have the value of inclusion. That you have agreed as a spiritual community that this is how we are going to be in covenant, in relationship with each other. That you are going to welcome and celebrate each person that comes in, regardless of age, regardless of ability, regardless of race, regardless of religious beliefs. Let's take a breath on that one. Amen. Regardless of religious beliefs, we welcome. That does not mean that unity does not have a teaching. Unity has a teaching. But at the same time, we welcome religious beliefs. We welcome cultural backgrounds. We welcome sexual orientation. We honor that divine nature in each and every person. Because guess what? You may be the only Christ they see today. More than likely, often, you may be the only divine presence that someone sees. So we include them. You welcome the gifts. You welcome the ideas. You welcome the talents. And you deeply value the presence of each and every person in this community. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that something to work towards? Amen. I'm not there yet, but it's something that I have worked towards. And because you have said, we have a covenant with each other, we'll work towards too. This is a practical spirituality, as Charles Williamson said. So at each and end of each lesson, I say, most of the time, I say, so this is your assignment, if you choose to accept it. This is your assignment. Become aware, more and more aware of your values. See them. See how we live together in spiritual community, utilizing these values. And as I was thinking and reflecting on inclusiveness, those other wonderful values that you have, love, prayer, celebration, spiritual principles, inspired teachings. Once you continue to work on those things in our life, guess what? Inclusion is a given. It's a given. Because each and every person that walks through that door is a walking Christ presence. So how you doing? Of course you are. I love you. I bless you. I behold the living presence of God within you, and I hold hold you in my heart as you continue to step in and live these beautiful values in this community. And so it is. Amen.